Hello, this is Mark Wildman of Wildman Athletica, and today we are going to talk about our kneeling clean and press to windmill. This exercise continues to be part of our Turkish Getup Mastery series, where we are ripping pieces of the Turkish Getup apart and building them up into their own individual exercises. The great thing about complex exercises is that they contain a lot of steps. Every one of those steps can be turned into its own drill, and then you can assemble those steps in any number of ways in order to make even more drills. This drill is specifically for the half kneeling position. The half kneeling position is a position that I personally come across a lot in athletics, in firearms trainings, in movies, in fight scenes. All of these activities contain the half kneeling position. So people need to be fairly good and stable in the half kneeling position. I find that people, if they don't train the half kneeling position, aren't very stable there because most people are not used to being in this position and being under load. But if you're going to do certain types of throws in judo or fight scenes, being stable in this position is fairly important. Our half kneeling position has a 90-degree angle in the front leg. We're trying to get our shin to be basically vertical and have our knee directly over our ankle so that later on, when we power out of this position, we can power more out of the heel. Our rear leg should also be at 90 degrees. If this one's at 90, this one should be at 90. It's very hard to have one at 90 and one not at 90 if you're on level ground. If you're on unlevel ground, then there's all types of other considerations to have. We want our position to be shoulder width apart, which is our squat width apart, and we are using this distance to be a transition between all of the different moves that we may do. If we were to stand up, we could go to inside circles or outside circles, front to back. We're always trying to build a normal athletic stance, which means there's nothing fancy about it. There's not super turnout. It's not twice as wide. It's not fifth position. It's just a basic stand-up position, and we want to be able to move in and out of that position all the time. In order to do that, many people, when they come to power out of this position, will rock forward to come up, and that's fine as long as you're not under load. If you have to be holding something or doing something, wearing plates, whatever, it helps to be able to power out of this position with your spine vertical. These exercises help you do that. We've already have a video on our kneeling clean. We have a video on our kneeling press. We have a video on our kneeling clean and press. We are now going to add the windmill portion to this activity. So it's going to be clean, press, windmill, which means put your hand flat on the ground. Flat on the ground is pretty important here. We don't want to do this weird cupping hand thing that you will occasionally see people do. Put that palm flat on the ground. Fingers are going to point straight to the side or ahead. They can be anywhere in that continuum for this thing to work. Where we don't want them is to be back, just for now, and that's because when we link this to our Turkish Getup later on, if our hand is back and we try to go through the Turkish Getup movement, it's not going to work. Hand has to be pointed out or straight ahead. Probably 45 degrees is generally okay. Your hand position is not going to be super important as long as it's not back. Starting with our clean, use the L of your hand into the L of the kettlebell. Grab L to L, hike the kettlebell back. We point our thumb back so that if anything goes wrong, we don't damage our elbow or put too much stress on our bicep or the bicep connection tissues. We're going to clean the weight up. We are going to press, and then we are going to touch the ground. Come all the way back up, bring the weight down, hike it back, repeat. When we are doing this, our hand is up overhead. We want to look at the top hand while we're performing this activity. We don't need to look at the ground. It's in the same place it always is. It's underneath our feet. So our hand should go down, find the ground, and then we don't have to look at it. We want to look at our top hand because if something goes wrong and we bend our hand or we compromise in some way, we're going to drop that weight and it's going to come right past our face. By looking up, we are going to roll our shoulder back and try and turn the lat of that top arm on so that we can stabilize heavier loads. When we look down, we tend to roll our shoulder forward and down and lose all the strength in our shoulder, dropping the weight. We would prefer to just not do that if at all possible. This exercise, when done faster, can become less of a clean and press to a windmill and more of a clean to a side press. So a clean to a side press, we would roll our shoulder open, putting the elbow behind our body, press at the same time that we are going down. Loop it back in. When we're doing a side press, we are both falling away and pressing the weight at the same time. The chest is moving down, the hand is moving up, and they are moving away from each other to become more efficient at getting to the bottom position faster. Let's demonstrate it with a 24K. What you'll notice with the 24K is that I did it 2 or 3 different ways there. I did it as a side press, I did it as a clean and press, find the ground, and I did it as a side press with kind of a reverse side press coming back up. You can do it any way you want. The goal is to get good at using these muscles and your hips to drive the weight up. So this position is continuing our breakouts. We've added that side press to it, so we've gone from having a kettlebell moving front to back into our press, and we've added another plane of motion to the activity. Athletic movements have more and more planes of motion to them. So we want to think about more than just pressing straight up and down or hip hinging straight up and down. We also have to make sure that we add movements where we find the ground, where we rotate. All these different positions are pieces of athletic development. And you can either get them from your sport, which is how a lot of people do it. A lot of people do their barbell fundamentals, and then they play a sport for years, and then they kind of fill in all the holes. But if you're not playing a complex athletic sport like judo or wrestling or dance, then you probably should have those movements incorporated into your weight training so that there are not planes of movement which you don't have. Planes of movement which you cannot be functional in are planes of movement where you're going to get hurt. This has been Mark Wildman of Wildman Athletica.